Slobodan, welcome to this presentation about truth and finding of the truth regarding events in Kosovo in 1998-99, and about how to open up for reconciliation and forgiveness between Serbia and Kosovo. As peace today is absent. Those who represent the media are especially welcome, as it is this so-called fourth state power's job to control the three other state powers' actions, namely the legislative, the executive, and the justice power. Look after that they are following the laws of the country and the international laws. This welcome is also extended to our viewers following on web TV. There is a small practical thing I will mention. When you, during my lecture, see me lifting my arms, it's not because of mosquitoes or flies here. It is a sign to our cameraman to what to focus on. The viewers on the web TV, they can see either me or the PowerPoint presentation I'm showing. But you can show both things at the same time. So that's the reason why I have to do this special move with my arm. What I'm about to tell you probably will not be easy to hear. However, as an eyewitness, I feel an obligation to disclose information that should have been done by the governments in Serbia and Kosovo, but they failed to do so. The title of my lecture is Out of the Shadows of Slobodan Milosevic, Towards Reconciliation and Forgiveness between Serbia and Kosovo. While the other part, there is two parts, the other part is a small one, is called Humanitarian Law Center's Comparison of Sources regarding war victims in Kosovo, 1998-99. My name is Josef Martinsen. I'm a Norwegian. I'm 75 years old. My education and background is both from the military, where I served in the army for 17 years, and then I moved over to the civil society, where I have been working for 38 years. My last job abroad in the military was in South Lebanon. I was a company commander at what we called UNIFIL Force. It was the United Nations interim force in Lebanon. And I served there for 6 months. After the military, my first employment were at the paper and graphic industry company as an operational manager for 6 years. Then I moved over to be an independent consultant. I hope we are doing the right things now with the camera. That's good. After my 3 years as independent consultants, I moved over to the bank business, where I served at the Central Bank of Norway for 10 years. I retired early in the age of 57 after holding a position as assistant head of division in the central bank. Now I'm going over to the subject, the Kosovo war victim case and the documentation. In the summer of 1999, after being a retiree for 1 year, I was contacted by Norwegian Church Aid, NCA, and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And I was hired in as a coordinator for an emergency program called Removal of Dead Bodies from Wells all over Kosovo in 1999. That project lasted for 8 months until March 2000. Based on my experience from this job for UNHCR, I wrote a book called Dødsbrønnen i Kosovo, that is Norwegian. In English, it's called Kosovo, the Wells of Death. It was published in 2005 by Cypress Publishing House in Norway. And subsequently, a year later, it was published also in Albanian, Serbian, and English in Pristina. From the summer of 2006 until 2010, based on a private initiative, I was researching over 400 mass graves reported by the International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia, called the ICTY. They reported to UN Security Council in New York in November 1999. The result of my research became my second book, What Happened in Kosovo, 1998-99, a documentation, also published by Cypress Publishing House, Norway, in October 2010. A year later, a Norwegian film production company released a documentary film based on my 2 books. It's called The Process After a War, based on my 2 books. The 2 books and the film you can download from this webpage called Truth Commission, now called KosovoTrilogy.com. And it's free of charge. After 16 years on the Balkans, I have experienced the result of hostility and wars, and what that can bring about for ordinary people who always turn out to be the one bearing the burden. There is a saying in English, war is hell. And hell it was on the Balkans or Yugoslavia. For 10 years, fellow citizens, even neighbors, and families fought against each other. The civil society broke totally down. Let me show you the no, this picture I found in a newspaper last year. It's from 1990, where a Yugoslav basketball team won the championship in basketball against Soviet Union. And the reason why they had this report, they were presenting a book called Once Brothers by Vlad Divac. The picture dates back, as I said, to 1990, depicting two basketball players, Vlad Divac and Drazen Petrovic, who were both members of this Yugoslavian basketball team that beat Soviet Union and became world champions in 1990. These two players turned from friends to enemies. I also experienced how all people, regardless of ethnical groups, can live together peacefully and in harmony, away from destructive political shadows. The political structure that often put in power by elections can unfortunately backlash on the same people who elected them in the first place. In my opinion, this is exactly what happened in the former Yugoslavia, and especially in Serbia. Apart from those invited here, this lecture is particularly addressed to the younger generation who has been deprived for the complete story of the events that took place in Kosovo in 1998-99. As of October 2013, I have been partly living in Serbia and in Norway. I set up this webpage in 2014 called Truth Commission, in English, Serbian and Albanian edition, with the intent to promote finding a process for reconciliation and forgiveness between Serbia and Kosovo. On January last year, I did a presentation of my documentation for the media and the non-governmental organization here at the Media Center. My lecture this time will deal with three elements that I think are of vital importance for bringing peace to people in Serbia and Kosovo. I'm doing this because I love Balkan and the people living here. I have been here for almost 16 years. I consider Balkan as my second home. In my opinion, these three elements can pave a way out of the stalemate that has crippled relations between Serbia and Kosovo for so long. First element is the families of the victims of the war still missing. There are 1,669 people altogether still missing. The second element is the perpetrators and witnesses of war crimes committed in Kosovo and their situation today. They were ordered by their political and military leaders at the time to execute actions that led to war crimes against Albanian civilians. The third element is the younger generation in both Serbia and Kosovo, and their chance to choose a new path leading forwards from former hostilities that was, in my opinion, based on myths and went centuries back in time. Solving this first element is, as I see it, the key for building normal future relations between Serbians and Kosovo Albanians. It is tragic that the families concerned are still waiting for an answer regarding the fate of their loved ones. This can be solved by cooperation and interactions. The Milosevic regime used a sinister method when it came to cover up of criminal acts like random killing of civilians in order to create a state of terror. Political and military leaders ordered these actions. The method consisted of moving dead bodies from the crime scenes to different locations, often far from the crime scenes, in order to hide evidence. The Milosevic regime was behind these actions, especially in 1998-99. This tainted and branded Milosevic's reign in Kosovo as aggressive and criminal. The credibility of these assumptions was proved by court verdicts from the International Criminal Tribunal in Hague in 2009, and testimonies made before the same court. When Milosevic realized that he would have to leave Kosovo, he ordered mass graves inside Kosovo with dead Albanians to be reopened. This is a map from June 2000 and now 1999, June of 1999, and they show that the number of mass graves registered at the 20th of June. Dead corpses, dead Albanian civilians from reopened graves were loaded onto big trucks and transported to several places inside Serbia. And there were thousands of them. The reason for these actions was to conceal evidence, since without corpses, there is no evidence of war crimes. The second element I have listed here is the perpetrators of numerous war crimes and witnesses to these war crimes. They are still living in Serbia and Kosovo. They are suffering as well, psychologically and physically, from the activities they were ordered to participate in without their consent. The military was compulsory for most soldiers, and with the state of emergencies declared by President Milosevic, all units within the police and special forces were mounted. The possibility of choice did not exist, and those who did not follow orders were treated as deserters and traitors, thus subjected to harsh punishment, even executions. In 1989, I think Milosevic must have had a mental breakdown, or at least very bad advisors, when he initiated the revoking of the autonomous status that Kosovo had been enjoying since 1974. This, in turn, speed up an ongoing process inside Kosovo among the Albanian population, aiming for the status of a republic, equal with the 6 other republics in Yugoslavia. The population in Kosovo at that time consisted of approximately 80% Albanians and 20% Serbians, Roma, and other ethnic groups. Which indicated that the Serbian dominance in Kosovo was not longer desirable, especially after Milosevic withdrew the Kosovo autonomous status in Yugoslavia. The Albanian population started a civil, non-violent disobedience actions that lasted for circa 6 years towards a harsh and hard-handed Serbian rule in Kosovo. The Albanians established a parallel civil administration with a focus on education and healthcare. I mention these historical facts since they have been suppressed under Milosevic's regime, and not much have been done after his reign to enlighten and inform the younger generation about crucial historical events. However, there have been a few people in Serbia from the early 1990s who acted as whistleblowers and took a stand and confronted Milosevic's regime concerning its policies and atrocities committed. Some of these people were the following. The first one I have listed is Mirko Kovac, a Yugoslavian author who wrote a critical article in regarding Milosevic's policy in the magazine of Srpska Reč in May 1992. You will find this article in my second book, that you can download from the internet. Number 2 is Natasha Kandic, human rights activist, founder and former executive director of the Humanitarian Law Center from 1992 in Belgrade. Number 3, Sonja Biserko, a former Yugoslavian diplomat for over 20 years, human rights activist from 1991, after resigning from her position as a diplomat at the United Nations in Geneva due to Milosevic policies. The first one is Svetlana Djordjevic. She was a former taxi driver in Kosovo, Polje, in Kosovo, between 1995 and 1999. Based on her diaries, she wrote the book called Testimonies About Kosovo in 2003. It was published here in Serbia, and she followed up this publishing with an interview in TV stations and radio stations, among them B92. After that, she experienced a massive harassment by Serbian police, which in turn made her seek asylum in Norway in 2004. All these people listed here made a substantial contribution towards enlightening the public, but they were branded as traitors. They have not been recognized to this day. In my opinion, their work regarding documentation and political awakening for over 20 years should have been part of the curriculum in the schools today. One thing that strikes me when I look at this list is the names, the list of these names, is that women are well represented. They have demonstrated a high degree of civil courage in a turbulent time. After the war, there was no place to turn to for perpetrators and witnesses with psychological and physical problems related to the illegal and criminal actions they were ordered to participate in. The initiative Truth Commission, Serbia Kosovo, will help find a place for these people with their need for help. The initiative will also look for information about still missing victims of the war in Kosovo. Both perpetrators and witnesses are welcome to share their knowledge about mass graves that contains 1,669 persons still not found. In order to solve this first element I mentioned, we need help to find out where these dead bodies are still concealed. So perpetrators and witnesses who know where victims are buried are asked to contact us using our webpage. There is instructions on the webpage how to go on further. There are people in Serbia who have recently been interviewed by newspaper about mass graves that are already known. An article about these graves was written by Maria Ristic, April last year, in a Burn publications. You can find the article down at the table there after the lecture. And here is a picture of the presentation of the lecture on the internet. There is the third element I mentioned, is the younger generation in Serbia and Kosovo, who have been suffering due to unstable political conditions over the years. Normal possibility to choose freely their future ways of life, such as working conditions or educational opportunities, home or abroad, have been almost non-existent. In the former Yugoslavia, you could travel freely with a Yugoslavian passport. A well-functioning demand and supply existing related to work and educational possibilities all over Western Europe. From the late 1980s, and particularly after 1989, this possibility vanished. The political system under Milosevic's 15-year reign brought misery and hardship upon the people in general, and especially the younger generation. After 1999, the political leaders in Serbia and Kosovo did not manage to find a mutual political path focusing on future instead of the past. This situation prevented the youth from breaking an evil circle of political tit-for-tat game that has lasted way too long. The younger generation, both in Serbia and Kosovo, now today has a unique chance to change the political direction. And such a chance does not come often. The task for the youth is to break the current evil circle of the political eye for an eye game by informing their fathers and grandfathers about the need to acknowledge and recognize the fact on the ground, so that damaged internal and mutual affairs can be restored. The youth today can achieve what their forefathers failed to accomplish, namely to create an environment for talks on all levels without being afraid of the man next door who might turn on them in retaliation just because they happen to have a different view on the issues at hand. It is necessary to point out which issues are the obstacles for providing a better environment for reconciliation and truth-seeking. And the number one issue is finding these missing dead people. The youth can persuade the older generation to open up regarding the whereabouts of the missing remains or victims, and open up an openness on both sides concerning this issue at hand can lead towards an environment where reconciliation can flourish. This goes for both Serbia and Kosovo. A good example of this is Fadil Mucholi from the village of Old Poklek, who lost his whole family, wife, children, mother, father, and siblings, 14 in all. They were massacred among 52 other people. They were just killed in a house and then burned in the same house. In an interview, Fadil told me that he was willing to forgive perpetrators, providing that the Serbian authorities recognized and acknowledged the atrocities committed by their forces. He said, the region, he said, would never recover psychologically unless the governments involved understood the necessity of acknowledgement. Germany, long time back in 1945, they recognized and acknowledged the Nazis' atrocities during World War II, and that paved the way for normalization and a fantastic build-up of Germany and her neighbors. A general transformation of attitude among the population is much needed on the Balkans when it comes to other ethnic groups than their own. This can only be achieved by a massive engagement in the school system, from kindergarten all the way to high schools and university. The focus needs to be put on correct contemporary history, reflecting facts on the ground that all parties can agree on. Facts on the ground, documented by court decision, should prevail. This was my first part, and I will now use 15 minutes for the last part I have concerning humanitarian law centers, comparison of sources. And after this 15 minutes, we can take a break for a coffee, and we will have questions and answer if there are some. Part 2 of my lecture is called Comparison of Sources. It is tied to a section of Humanitarian Law Center's presentation of expert evaluation regarding Kosovo Memory Book and 4 other documentarists, myself included, dealing with the same subject, namely victims of the war in Kosovo, 1998-99. The Kosovo Trilogy, 98-99, is my documentation of what happened in Kosovo, based on my research and international documentation in the aftermath of Serbian withdrawal from Kosovo in mid-June 99. The most significant and probably the most horrible of what happened in Kosovo 98-99 is the planned killing of thousands of innocent civilian Albanians, women, children and men, found in approximately 400 mass graves scattered around Kosovo and Serbia. Dr. Patrick Ball, Executive Director for the Human Rights Data Analysis Group, and Professor Michael Spagat, Head of Economic Departments of Royal Holloway University of London, supported the presentation that humanitarian law centers gave, together with Natasha Kandic. Patrick Ball made an important statement concerning documentation and methods used to collect or find data after warlike events. The documentation based on compiling information, that's my method, from existing sources. That is, for example, data collected by international organizations versus humanitarian law centers' method of documenting statements made by witnesses and family members of victims is normally regarded as equally reliable statistically. Before going into detail concerning this comparison, I think it's worth mentioning that when I first came to Belgrade in October 2013, I visited Humanitarian Law Center and Natasha Kandic and presented my 2 books and the documentary film. After the presentation and handing over of my 2 books and the DVD as a gift, I suggested that we could meet again and find ways to cooperate, since both Humanitarian Law Center and I were looking for truth about events in Kosovo. I was told to make contact a week later, but Humanitarian Law Center did not respond to my approach later on. Now over to the table that shows the comparison. There is, on this picture, there are 4 columns on the left side presenting the analysis that Humanitarian Law Center's documentation. And there are 2 columns to the right which have some green text present the findings of 4 other documentarists. It is obvious that the documentation of the latter have 3,119 more names of victims than Kosovo Memory Book. The 4 people mentioned, the 4 other documentaries mentioned, is one, Josef Osmani. His documentation is called Serbian Crimes in Kosovo, 1998-99. He was a former director for an entity called Archivi Kosovas. I don't know much about detail concerning his documentation and sources. Number 2 is LDK, is an abbreviation for a political party, Democratic League of Kosovo. I don't know anything concerning their documentation and sources either. And then you have my documentation, the Kosovo, the Wells of Death, and what's happened in Kosovo, 1998-99, a documentation. I also initiated and contributed to a documentary film called The Process After a War by Eva Ottestad, a Mindre production in Norway. Last, this KMDLNU is an abbreviation for the Council of Defense of Human Rights and Freedom, Kosovo. This organization has branches all over Kosovo and should thus be in a position to know the most about civilian victims of the war and other things that occurred in 98-99. The right table column shows the detailed list of exact number of people, but without names. The people do not appear in Kosovo memory book, and it's listed 6 kind of types of people found. 488 was found alive, but there is no names on these people. 151 people found having a natural death. There's no names. 184 people found having death not related to war. No names. 715 people unknown. No names. 581 war victims. No names. And then 1,071 people being checked by Humanitarian Law Center, and still no names. That is a total of 3,119 people. What strikes me the most when I see this particular list is the lack of names. Especially when I compare how accurate and precise the Humanitarian Law Center usually is when they publish documents of their findings or their statement. This time, Humanitarian Law Center has failed to document verifiable personal data of civilian victims mentioned by the other documentarists, even though they publicly claim that they are inaccurate. This publication was published without prior consultation with the other documentarists, myself included. In the present difficult state of affairs between Serbia and Kosovo, all parties involved should do their best to find the truth and present it in an open and friendly atmosphere. We need transparency, not hidden agendas. I myself made the request to Humanitarian Law Center Kosovo and asked for the names of those 3,190 presumable wrongly listed. I wanted to correct my documentation if any mistakes appeared in it. However, they could not come up with a list of names. After some exchanged emails, I received the names of 9 persons. 5 of these people were still alive, and 4 names were double listed or wrongly spelled. My documentation contains 10,592 names collected from international sources. If these names are all that is related to my documentation, I question the way that Humanitarian Law Center has handled this case. Was the purpose to enlighten the public? Or was it to put the bad spotlight on the documentation of other people or groups? Let's look into the numbers of victims that Humanitarian Law Center documented and how they present the number of victims. The Kosovo Memory Book contains names of 14,263 persons. That is a mixture of civilian, police, special police, military, paramilitary, and civilian militia. Victims of Serbian, Albanian, and Roma ancestry. In the lower part of the picture, I have included a handwritten calculation that reflects the text and numbers in the upper part of the picture. In my opinion, these mixtures of war victims conceal the facts that at least 9,000 innocent Kosovo Albanians were deliberately murdered in the period between January 98 and June 99. Those bodies were found in 400 mass graves. The special structure of the presentation strikes me when I study it closely, because as you can see, 82% of the civilian victims, 9,000 listed as war victims, are actually war crime victims. That is civilian Albanians. Children, women, men, found in 400 mass graves all over Kosovo and Serbia. Of these 1,436, as you can see down there, listed Serbian civilians, I guess that approximately 700 of them are civilian combatants. That is police, special police, and civilian militia. The facts around this issue will be up to the historians to find. Of the listed 3,097 military war victims, Serbians, Roma, and Albanians, 2,059 are Albanians. This mix of victims draws a veil over the fact that the vast majority of the victims are war crime fatalities and should be presented as such. These significant facts shouldn't be camouflaged. I would advise Humanitarian Law Center to change their presentation and to present war crime victims as a separate group, a distinction that these victims, in my opinion, deserve. I have a last personal thinking at the end of this lecture. Let there be no doubt about the fact that the murdering of more than 9,000 innocent civilian Albanians during 98-99 and the ruthless expulsion of more than half of the Albanian population in the winter and spring of 98-99 did happen. And I cannot find any justification for these actions. The time has come for recognition and acknowledgement. Thank you for your attention. That was the end of my lecture. And now it's open for people to catch a coffee or drink, or we can start off with questions concerning my lecture, if there are any. So, no questions? There's one. Yeah, you forgot the mic, yeah? Mm-hmm.
If it's easier for you, I can do it in English. If
Yes,
if it's
that's
okay.
good. And could
Of course,
could
of
you
course.
say your name?
Of course. My name is Predrag Miletić, and I come from the Humanitarian Law Center.
Yeah.
I came especially for your presentation. I was the last year when you had a presentation also here.
Yeah.
And I must not say, but I highly admire your job, what you're doing, your passion for doing everything you're doing here in the Balkans. As you said, this is your second home, and what I wanted to say about these remarks about the Humanitarian Law Center and the last year presentation and everything you said. Firstly, the Kosovo Memory Book is now online and available. The list is available on our website, on the Kosovo Memory Book website. And all the names from other 4 documentaries that you said that we wanted to check our list comparing to other 4 lists. That was the only intention. There is no bad intentions in what we wanted to do, just to check to see if we maybe slip some name. Maybe we wanted to double check times. And all the names that are not in the Kosovo Memory Book, which is online and available, are the names that we still didn't check. You know, we didn't publish all the names of, as you said, this 3,091 that we put in other register, because there is always possibility that some of those names could appear as a war victim and finish in the Kosovo Memory Book, because our research is still ongoing. We have 2 years. We are supported for 2 more years for this research, and we are now doing this checking of all the names that we ain't sure. But there is one observation about the what happened in Kosovo book. I think that's a very great book, and a great effort to make a list of all the names of the victims in the Kosovo. But we also had an approach to some UNMIK and OMPF lists and ICRC lists in Kosovo, and I understand that you made a compilation of all these sources that were available for your research, but there are some categories of victims that are not, that were listed as closed because there was no available information on this person's status, or they were closed for some other reasons, found alive, and so. These are, we didn't close any case as not victim before we tried to research and double check it in the field. All the 4 documentaries that you mentioned didn't have a possibility to check every name that you were publishing. You know, you just made compilation, but we have researchers in the field, and we are trying to check every name and to determine the person's status. And there is also problem of the methodology, you know, because all the 4 methodologies of all the 4 sources are different. Your methodology and our methodology, that's the reason why there are some differences between our 4 lists. But I must say again that from your book, from a book that you compiled, What Happened in Kosovo, we succeeded to confirm around maybe 10 or 15 names that we didn't have before. And without your book and without your list that you compiled, we might never succeed in collecting all those names. And that's, even if there is only one name that we succeeded to confirm upon your book, it's a big success for all. And I think that it's just the way that our project was going. You know, we also started from the zero. We had some documentation from the before, but also trying to collect as many sources as we can, you know, as you saw on last year's presentation. And I must also say just one more thing, and I will finish. There is an I don't know how to call. There is one another guy from the Norway. His name is
Christian Kars.
Christian Kars, and he is very malicious. I can say that he was very malicious in his attempts to say that your book was a falsificate, and I think that's very, very bad that he was saying. We do not agree with him, and his attacks on your work was, for me, very, very bad, how should I say, you know. And I don't agree with his observations of your book, because you say in one part in your book, you are saying that you have date of killing or the date of exhumation, you know. If there were not available the date of killing, you know, if he read that, he would know that, but he didn't read, obviously. And he was trying to say that you're, I don't know, having more names for 2,000 years, but that was exhumations, not the killings, you know. So we don't stand on his observations, and I regret for his attacks on your work, and I highly admire what you're doing. It was just a comment, not a question, but thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you for your question or your remarks. I will first say that I regard the work that Natasha Kandic have done during 20 years as very highly. She have done a remarkable job for finding out what happened during all the wars on the Balkans, all the 4 wars in the Balkans. The last one she took on was Kosovo. So I have no hard feelings for Natasha Kandic. The only thing we reacted on, and that was used of people who didn't like my work, and maybe not your work either. They used this as an excuse to say that we falsificate names, we falsificated whatever. So it's good that you took up this and mentioned that, and we will have it in mind. But I must say that still, I don't understand why you put it up, those 4 other documentarists, and you named these 3,190. People had to assume that there was something mysterious, something wrong here. Maybe they tried to falsificate things. So you see, that is the reason why I reacted as I did. Yeah. Okay, other questions? If not, you can have coffee and you can look at the things that I have laid out there. And there is a copy of my lecture in English and Serbian. So if you want it, you can take a copy of it. Thank you so much for your attention.